Well, hello there, my young readers, and welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. We've got another great story lined up for you. And guess who's back? You've guessed it, Thomas. So sit back, relax, and make sure you've got your snacks and your drinks right there with you. And if you need to go to the bathroom, pause, go do it, and come on back. And remember, guys, stay tuned till the end because Triangel and I are going to talk all about it. So stay tuned. The name of this story is called The Promise Problem, and this is part of the Thomas and Friends series. Enjoy. It was a beautiful day on the island of Sodar. Thomas the Tank Engine was playing Stack the Tracks with Carly, the crane car. His best friend Percy watched, and the Fix-It engine Sandy cheered him on. Thomas knew he could do it. He was the number one engine. He kept the tall stack steady as Carly reached way, way up and placed the final track. Ta-da! Thomas peeped. We knew you could do it, Percy said. Dude! Thomas and his friends turned to see an engine racing toward them. It was Diesel. Nice stack, but I bet I could go higher, he bragged. He bagged up to the car Thomas had been using and attached himself to it. Load me up, Carly, Diesel said. Hey, I'm not done yet, Thomas protested. The two engines tugged the car back and forth. The tall stack wobbled and swayed, then fell. Just then, Gordon sped toward them. Gordon was going too fast. He wasn't able to stop in time. His coupling broke, and he derailed, leaving his long train of cars behind. How am I supposed to make my delivery now? Gordon asked. Gordon's cars were filled with tires and bicycles, furniture, and train parts. These items are old, but still useful, Gordon said. I was on my way to Whiff's recycling plant. I can take them there, Thomas offered. Thomas, promise. It's too much for a little engine, Gordon said. There were 6 cars, all full. A thought flew into Thomas's funnel. I can take half, and Diesel can take half, he said. That's a smoking idea, Diesel said, letting black smoke drift out of his vents. We can race to see who gets there first, Thomas said. He wanted to prove he was still the number one engine. Thomas and Diesel each coupled to 3 of Gordon's cars and took off towards Whiff. Both engines chugged along as fast as they could. As they struggled up the steep hill side by side, Diesel saw a chance to make the race easier for himself. He tilted towards Thomas, causing a heavy refrigerator fall into one of Thomas's cars. Thomas tried to keep going up the hill, but the extra weight made it harder. As Diesel inched ahead, Thomas could feel the heavy cars pulling him backward. Suddenly, Thomas heard a snap. Thomas watched, horrified, as his cars rolled back down the hill toward a dead end. He tried to chase them, but all 3 cars flew off the tracks, and so did Thomas. Thomas and his cars landed in a mud puddle. Percy, Sandy, and Carly raced after him to help. As Carly attached her crane to Thomas and started to lift him out, Thomas could hear Diesel tooting in the distance. I'm never going to win the race now, Thomas said sadly. But you promised Gordon you'd make his delivery, Percy said. Thomas knew his friend was right. He'd made a Thomas promise, and he wanted to keep it. He let Carly place him back on the tracks and started heading toward Whiffs. As Thomas was making up time, Diesel was standing still. He was waiting for a drawbridge to come down so he could finish the race. He didn't want to waste his lead. The moment the drawbridge was in place, Diesel lurched forward so suddenly that all his cars rattled and creaked. As he sped away, he didn't notice that his rear doors had opened. One by one, items tumbled out. Thomas had almost caught up to Diesel when he noticed the cargo littering the tracks ahead. "Diesel!" he called out. "Your cargo!" But Diesel couldn't hear him. He was speeding away faster and faster. Thomas stopped and picked up the fallen items. Percy, Carly, and Sandy soon caught up. "Why did you stop?" Carly asked. "I still have a promise to keep," Thomas explained. "That means getting all of Gordon's cargo to Whiffs." "We're going to help," Percy said. Everyone started moving the cargo into Thomas's cars. Before Thomas knew it, the job was done. Diesel arrived at Whiffs and thought he had won, but Thomas and his friends arrived with all of the cargo in tow. "Thank you, Thomas, for keeping your promise," Gordon said. "I couldn't have done it without Percy, Carly, Sandy, and Diesel," Thomas said. Diesel's cargo might have fallen out, but he had gotten it most of the way there. Gordon was happy that his cargo arrived, but he still had a broken coupling. He didn't know how he would get his cars back to the station. "Maybe I can help," Sandy said. She reached into one of Thomas's cars and pulled out an old hunk of metal. It was a coupling. Gordon tried it, and sure enough, his cars coupled up and he was ready to roll again. "I guess these old things are still useful," Thomas peeped. Everyone smiled. Diesel turned to Thomas. "Race you back." Thomas' smile got bigger. "You're on." Well, that ends our story. And like I told you guys in the beginning, this was going to be another good one. And again, Thomas did not disappoint.
He sure didn't. But I tell you who did.
Diesel.
But Diesel was being typical.
Diesel was being Diesel. I don't expect him to be anything other than him.
Yeah, and I think also Thomas knows Diesel is going to be Diesel because the way he, acknowledged him.
Yeah, when they got everything to Gordon and he was giving credit out to everyone that helped him, remember at the very end, he did include Diesel. Even though it was, on a side note kind of thing.
Yeah, because I guess you do have to give him some credit. He did get there with some of the items, if not all of the items.
Yep, and I do know that of all the characters in the Thomas series, Diesel just gets on your last nerve.
He does indeed. I don't know why, but he just rubs me the wrong way. But I can tell you who doesn't rub me the wrong way and who I quite enjoy, and that's Thomas. And for him to make a promise, and I love how he dubs it a Thomas promise. And basically he's saying if he gives his word, he's going to be bound by it.
Exactly.
I love that.
Me too.
His word is his bond.
And that's a trait that people should really strive for. If you say you're going to do something, then you do it. You keep your word. That's what's important. And Thomas did that. Not only did he do that, and he embodies what it means to keep your word, as much of a competitor as he is, and he's very competitive, especially with Diesel, that he couldn't get to the end of that race unless he made sure he brought all the items he said he would to Gordon. And I really, really
I
admire
do
him
too.
for that.
And you know, not only do you and I, little darling, admire him for it, but so do his friends, because they're the ones that came to his help during his whole time of getting all that stuff to Gordon. Even though it was a race, that his friends saw what he had to do to get to the end of the race. And because Diesel did what he did, they decided to help Thomas to get him to the end. And they only did that because of the type of person he is. When he has a Thomas promise and he's going to make sure it happens, even Percy reminded him of it.
Exactly.
And that's just who Thomas is.
And I'll tell you something else. I believe he won that race because he completed it. He brought everything with him. Whereas Diesel was missing things. He had 3 cars that was supposed to be bringing. When that door opened and he didn't hear or didn't listen to Thomas that there were items being left behind, and Thomas grabs up items as he's coming, in order for the race to be completed, they had in their cars. And not only did Thomas bring everything in his car, he also brought things out of Diesel's car. So in my book, and probably everyone else's book, he's the winner.
He's the winner in my book as well. Well, little darling, we've come to that time where I've got to say farewell to everybody, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye!
Well, there goes Miss Triangel. Well, she enjoyed this story. I enjoyed this story, and we hope you enjoyed this story. Now, the big takeaway from this story is, of course, if you give your word, then you need to keep your word. A promise is a promise. So don't give your word or make a promise and don't keep it. Always keep your promise, because, you are as good as. Well, my young readers, I am so glad we had this time. And until next time, I am your little darling narrator, out.